What is going on, ladies and gents? Welcome to Collectors Gone Digital. My name is Josh, and on today's episode, we're covering some fun facts about the latest collectibles to drop on VeVe. So everything from the latest Groot announcement, which by the way, those mighties look awesome, all the way to drops like Carnage and Venom, and some in between. So grab a drink, grab a snack, sit back, relax, and enjoy. Now, I understand Captain VeVe did an interview with Dr. Prophet, so whenever the translated version in English gets dropped, I will be recapping that for you guys. I may even go live over the weekend. But first up on today's list is going to be Groot, and that's in light of the recent Marvel Mighties announcement. So on the right-hand side, you guys are going to see all 5 variants and the different versions of Groot as different superheroes. We have Spider-Man, Captain America, Captain Marvel, Black Panther, and Thor. Now, if you guys didn't know, Groot was actually once a part of S.H.I.E.L.D.'s paranormal division. So in a not so well-known storyline, he was actually recruited by the Howling Commandos, and he was part of a specialized unit called Stake. His role on the team involved battling paranormal creatures alongside the likes of Man-Thing, Vampire by Night, and Werewolf. His language, it's also not really known. The language is called Floral Colossus, but it's nearly impossible to actually understand. Rocket Raccoon being the only really consistent interpreter. There is one character, however, that has deciphered Groot's speech. This is Maximus the Mad, the insane brother of Black Bolt from the Inhumans. Now, in a Guardians of the Galaxy comic titled The Black Vortex, Groot was exposed to the power of an ancient artifact. This artifact amplifies his abilities, and his growth ability was magnified to a cosmic scale. So he actually ends up growing to the size of a planet. Now, on top of that, did you know this? In a darker storyline, it's actually revealed that Groot's sap, or his blood, is a powerful and potent hallucinogen. Lastly, if you guys aren't familiar with the Kingsman movies, I highly recommend watching them. They actually just dropped on Netflix. But did you know that in Guardians of the Galaxy Annual Number 1, there's a brief storyline where Groot becomes an honorary Kingsman, and yes, from the British spy organization. He dons a tailored suit, and he uses his abilities to assist in a covert mission. I mean, talk about random, but hey, that sounds cool. Next up, we have the adventure book from Pixar's Up movie. So inside this book, you're going to find that Ellie's handwritten notes are actually full of Easter eggs. If you actually look closely, her notes contain references to various Pixar films. So for example, there's a sketch of the Luxo Jr. lamp, the iconic Pixar mascot. On another page, there's a drawing that closely resembles A Bug's Life. Now, the book itself was actually inspired by scrapbooks from the early 20th century, in particular those from the 1930s and 40s. One of the main inspirations was actually a real-life scrapbook owned by one of the Pixar animators' grandparents. It was filled with mementos, ticket stubs, and pressed flowers. The book also contains hidden messages from Ellie. So during the scene where Carl's actually finally looking through the adventure book after her passing, there's a brief moment where you can see faint and barely legible text on the back of some pages. And these texts are actually messages from Ellie for Carl. Phrases like "thanks for the adventure" and "keep moving forward." Now, each page of the book was also hand-drawn by different Pixar artists, each artist bringing their own style. And lastly, there is also a secret message from the animators. So in one of the final shots where Carl's flipping through the book, there's a moment where the book's spine is actually visible, and if you pause it just at the right time, you'll see a tiny inscription saying "Adventure is out there." Next up, and sticking with the movie Up, we're now going to talk about Paradise Falls. So Paradise Falls is going to be based on Angel Falls in Venezuela, but with a little bit of a twist. So Angel Falls is going to be the world's tallest uninterpreted waterfall, and that's what Paradise Falls is visually based off of. But the creators of Up actually added their own unique elements, and they did this to make it more fantastical and mythical. Now, if you look closely at the rock formations around the falls, you'll actually notice that some of them resemble animals, faces, and then even the shape of Carl's house. These shapes were deliberately included by the animators to create a sense of mysticism and to subtly imply that the falls is a place of deep, ancient significance. Now, the fall's water was also designed to reflect Carl's emotions. It's actually used as a metaphor to convey his emotional state. So when Carl is first close to the falls, the water's turbulent and wild, representing his unresolved grief and frustration. As the story progresses, Carl begins to let go of his past, and the water becomes calmer, symbolizing his emotional release and acceptance. Last but not least, the falls was also originally supposed to be a deadly destination. So in early drafts of the script, Paradise Falls was depicted as a far more treacherous and unwelcoming place. In fact, the environment was filled with dangerous animals, including a giant snake that would have posed a significant threat to Carl and Russell. As the story evolved, the focus shifted from external dangers to the internal struggles that one goes through, and so Paradise Falls became more of a beautiful destination, lonely place, rather than a deadly one. Next up, we got Marvel's Ant-Man, aka Scott Lang. So here are 3 inspirations behind things in the film. Scott Lang was inspired by a real-life electronics engineer and inventor named Steve Sasson. Steve was responsible for inventing the digital camera. Just as Scott is a former electrical engineer and an expert thief who uses his skills to become a superhero, Sasson's innovative thinking revolutionized photography. Now, in terms of the quantum realm that's tied to the character, it is based on the real-world concept of quantum mechanics. In particular, the idea of quantum entanglement and the possibility of alternate dimensions at a subatomic level. Now, the visual design of the quantum realm in the films was inspired by electron microscope images and fractal patterns. In terms of the relationship between Ant-Man and Wasp, their dynamic actually mirrors a real-life scientific partnership, that being between entomologists, people who study insects, and their assistants, and how many real-life scientists rely on teamwork to conduct the research. Now, another collectible to drop alongside Ant-Man was the Sentinels, and this was in San Diego. The Sentinels, if you guys didn't know, were actually inspired by the real-world fears of automation, and this was back in the 1960s. Since machines began to replace human jobs, the idea of a robot designed specifically to hunt down and eliminate a segment of the population, aka mutants, reflected societal anxieties about the dehumanization that technology could bring. Now, they also have a connection to Tony Stark, and although Tony didn't create the Sentinels, there's a strong connection between his technology and what they have. This suggests that at some point the Sentinels might have been partially influenced or upgraded by Stark's innovations. They were also originally designed to evolve. Shout out to Evolved. That is right, believe it or not, they were originally meant to adapt and evolve based on the mutants they encountered. Now, in various storylines, this ability has led Sentinels to developing advanced tactics, upgrading themselves with new powers, and even gaining intelligence. Now, the Sentinel program was also influenced by Cold War paranoia. The fear of infiltration and the desire for a powerful deterrent against perceived threats are mirrored in the Sentinels' purpose. Much like how the US and the Soviet Union amassed vast arsenals, the Marvel Universe's governments turned to the Sentinels as a way to control and monitor the mutant population. Their color scheme also has a symbolic meaning. So in color theory, purple often represents power, mystery, and even danger. The contrasting magenta adds a sense of artificiality and unnaturalness, reinforcing the idea that these machines are cold, inhuman creations designed solely for destruction. Drop the mic. Next up, we're going back to up here for Carl's leather hat. Now, the placement of the hat in various scenes of the film is no accident. In moments of reflection or decision making, Carl's often seen adjusting or holding his hat, indicating his internal struggle or resolve. It also serves as quite the tribute to the Explorers Club, which is a real-world institution of adventurers and explorers. Carl and Ellie's dream of going to Paradise Falls is their version of joining the ranks of these legendary explorers. The hat also has possible ties to Carl's past occupation. So although the film doesn't explicitly say what his past occupation was, there are hints that he may have had a job that required him to be outdoors or involved in some sort of manual labor, possibly construction or something like that. The way he wears his hat also reflects his transformation throughout the movie. So at first he wears it low, kind of shielding himself from the world, but as the story progresses, he begins to open up to new experiences and relationships, and the way he wears his hat also changes. Next up, we're heading over to Banksy's Flower Bomber. And this artwork in particular was a tribute to 1960s counterculture. So the original piece actually appeared in Jerusalem on the West Bank barrier, and it was done in all black and white except for the flowers, which were colored. And this is to symbolize the potential for hope and peace to stand out in a world filled with conflict and aggression. I know David sells many different types of Banksy statues at Vagabond. I think this is a great one for them to start off with. And I think the only other really kind of big one that comes to mind is the girl with the heart balloon. But this one is going to be one of his most popular pieces. Moving on, let's talk some Venom and then some Carnage. So the character was originally inspired by a fan submission, and we have talked about this one on the channel before, but if you didn't know, back in 1982, a fan named Randy Schweller submitted an idea to Marvel for a black suit for Spider-Man. And this drawing that he submitted actually was very similar to what ended up being the final product. But Marvel ended up writing him back and said, hey, yeah, we're willing to take it, and paid him $220 USD for the rights. That is where the black suit for Spider-Man came from, and then Venom himself kind of came from that. Now it's known that he was created by 𝗏, who is the god of symbiotes. It's revealed that the symbiotes were originally intended as weapons of destruction. And so Venom's connection to 𝗏 kind of takes his narrative and now stretches it across the universe. Venom also has a uncanny craving for chocolate, but it is more than just a quirky character trait. The symbiote actually has a biological need for a chemical called phenethylamine, which is only found in human brains and chocolate. Now, a lesser known fact about Venom is that in a What If series, there's a storyline where Gwen Stacy actually never dies. Instead, she merges with the Venom symbiote after Peter Parker rejects it. So if you guys didn't know about that one and you want a little change of events, there you go. Next up, we got Carnage, also known as the Red Venom. I don't actually know if he is, but hey, it's a Red Venom. Different abilities, but we'll talk about that. Now, speaking of his color, the distinct red is not just an aesthetic choice. It's because the symbiote bonded with 𝗕𝗓𝗏 Cassidy's bloodstream, 𝗕𝗓𝗏 Cassidy being the host. Carnage has also been known to produce an offspring of his own, known as Toxin. And on one occasion, Toxin bonded with an NYC police officer named Patrick Mulligan and actually became the most powerful symbiote to date. Now, when compared to Venom, Carnage does have some unique abilities. He can transform a symbiote into solid weapons, like axes or spikes. And he can also detach parts of a symbiote and control them remotely. So in the Carnage USA storyline, Carnage actually goes beyond his usual citywide destruction, and he takes over an entire small town in Colorado. He infects the townspeople, and he turns them all into his own personal army. Ladies and gents, that is going to conclude today's episode. I really hope you enjoyed. Those were some fun facts about the latest collectibles to drop on VeVe. Now, I did mention I wanted to recap Captain VeVe's interview with Dr. Prophet. Considering today is our second episode of the week, if they end up dropping the translated video over the next couple days, I will likely stream it on the weekend. But regardless, if you can't make it, or even if it doesn't happen, I'll make sure to recap that for you guys next week. But if you enjoy the content, make sure to like and subscribe. Comment down below what you want to see in a future episode. And as for our next, I'll catch you then.